Lieutenant Colonel Dan Sebeck, thanks so much for taking time to discuss the important mission of the 319th Combat Training Squadron. And really what we'd like to do today is just get your perspective on what's going on with advanced training in support of developing the operational space warfighters that we need in the Space Force. So thanks so much for taking time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. I'm absolutely happy to be here and talk to you about the 319 CTS's mission and also the students that are coming through here and what they're going to do afterwards.
Oh, that's perfect. We're really excited to get your perspective. Before we get into that, would you mind just telling the audience a little bit about yourself, your career, and how you ended up at the 319th?
Absolutely. So quick bio, commissioned out of Texas A&M back in 2002 and became a missileer. So I got to go through the training squadron out at Vandenberg, which I had returned to later on. But 4 years on the 10th Missile Squadron and the OSS there, really enjoyed my time. And from there, got to jump over to space operations. So I had no background in space operations, but was really excited by the opportunities that were available. And from there, I got to go to 14th Air Force and work a little bit of the staff piece and do a little bit of action officer work. I got to work with a lot of great people there and learn a lot more about the bigger picture of space and strategy. And that's really where I got excited about where space was going. That was the first time I saw as a young major kind of the direction and the momentum that space was starting to gather. They're working for General Helms and General Raymond and lots of other great leaders. From there, I got to go to the 533rd and really get into the training piece. And at the time, as it normally is with space, it was a big time of transition. So I got to see really what training needed. And after that, I got to go do a little bit of international affairs at USAFE and mostly work the air piece. So from that point, I was already indoctrinated into space, loved the space career field. And I really liked working with my air partners, but I was really looking for how do we start integrating space into the security cooperation over at USAFE. And from there, I had the great opportunity to come back here to the 319th, a newly stood up Combat Training Squadron to train space warfighters. So that's the simple version of what our mission is, train space warfighters. And we have 13 different courses. And that's the quick rundown on kind of how I got here. And I think from there, we can go into what we do here.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. And I was part of that community as well that started out being missileers and then transitioning over to the space community and kind of bringing that culture. I think it's a unique opportunity now. And General Burt mentioned this just a couple of weeks ago when we were able to interview her, is that we are going to have dedicated space professionals kind of right out of the gate. Can you go into that just a little bit?
I can. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about the stand-up of the U.S. Space Force is the long-term transition that's going to occur. And it'll be long after I'm out of the Space Force. But the focus and the acceleration there is on space culture is exciting. And the fact that 10, 15 years from now, there will be folks that are space operators that won't have come from the missile field. And they won't be crossovers from other career fields. They'll have been in the space career field, steeped in it the whole time they've been in. And I've been in 17 and a half years. I can just imagine how much more knowledge I would have about the domain and about the capabilities and how to apply those capabilities if I had been focused on space the whole time. And no matter what, I think the Air Force did a great job, as we've discussed before, and I know General Burt discusses, there was air power before there was the Air Force, and there was space power before there was a Space Force. However, giving that focus is extremely important, and that's one of the big changes is the culture. You're going to have folks that have been steeped in it their whole career, and that's what I think a lot of us are really excited about right now.
Yeah, that is greatly appreciated, and I think you're spot on. I think people are going to be really happy to be just indoctrinated right into the space. One of your is Space Warfighter FollowOn. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of Space Warfighter FollowOn, what that means, and some of the courses that you're developing in support of that objective?
I can. So the Space Warfighter Follow-On, again, I'll try not to use any acronyms. So we call it SWIFT, but Space Warfighter Follow-On. Um, Everyone that's been in the space career field has known that training is evolutionary and it changes. And we've always been trying to build up and try to push down all the knowledge as low as we can. I mean, we want that brand new airman and that brand new lieutenant coming in to be steeped in something, in a specific career field if we can. And when I came in, I was again a missileer, and then 4 years later a space operator. And it's such a vague term that nobody really knows what it means. There's explaining that must occur after you tell someone you're a space operator. And one thing I was really excited about is when I came back from USAFE, I started reading, what's going on with space, and I saw that in 2018 they'd had a framework group get together in Air Force Space Command, and they said, what do we need to do to make our space operators more effective? And this is a long document, but the short version of it is they decided they needed depth in a career field and depth in a warfighting discipline. And that was in 2018 when that framework was delivered. And from there, they got to, we need to have space warfighter follow-on courses. So I think you know that folks, when they start their training, so say an 18-year-old airman straight out of basic, if they get a 1 Charlie 6 designation, they're going to go to the 533rd Training Squadron. And my good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Joe Clemmer out there is going to, and his instructors are going to spin them up in undergraduate space training. And that has always been an evolving process as well. But that was the baseline. And then from there, you would ship them out to become a space operator. We knew there needed to be more, but for that, you need the resources and you need the focus on space. What this framework allowed us to do was to quickly get to a follow-on. And eventually that term may change, but what that follow-on course is changing or is producing is students and operators that are focused on a specific warfighting discipline. So we're calling those space warfighting disciplines. And right now you have 4 of them. And I know General Burt talked about these as well, but you've got your orbital warfighting discipline, your space electronic warfare, your space battle management discipline, and then your space access and sustainment. What the 319th has done is developed 3 courses for 3 of those 4 disciplines. The OW, orbital warfare, space battle management, and then the space electronic warfare. So we're going to produce that fundamental baseline cadre of students that are ready to go off to their operational job in space, in a space operational squadron with that baseline course.
Could you talk a little bit about the timeline that folks can expect to go into as soon as they graduate? You use the example of an 18-year-old airman. There's the enlisted, obviously, and then the officer. What's the timeline, and are the courses going to be any different? Are they going to go right into their initial undergraduate space training and then a follow-up to your location directly afterwards? Or are they going to go to the unit first and then to you?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to explain that. So it is complicated, and we explain this to the students quite a bit because they all want to know, you leave San Antonio at your basic training, and the first thing you want to be able to tell your family or your girlfriend or your spouse is where you're moving to. And on your orders, it says you're going to the 533rd. Luckily, that has not changed. I'm happy to say that our newest sessions into space warfare career fields are going to the 533rd to get their undergraduate space training for enlisted and for officers. That training runs between 87 and 110 days, training days, depending on if you're an officer and enlisted. Immediately after they graduate from undergraduate space training next, they are going to PCS to their gaining operational squadron. And at that point, their ops squadron or their OSS is going to take control of them, and they are going to in-process them with all the wonderful things that have to happen when you in-process at a new base, especially if it's your first time ever PCSing. And then they're going to turn them around on a temporary duty assignment to the 319th CTS. So luckily, most of our operational squadrons are on the front range already, but some of these folks are going to be TDY from faraway places like from Beale or from a Cape Cod. And they are going to come to us for 15 training days to go through their OW, SEW, or SBM course. Then we are going to turn them back after they graduate in their space warfighting discipline course, and they're going to go back and be spun up to be crew or combat mission ready to go do their operational job.
Understand. So that's 15 days of top-off training. And I know that General Byrd talked a little bit about the classification requirements. And the good news is folks are going to be expected to have their top secret clearance before they go to undergraduate space training. And so are your courses going to be that top-off technical training at the TS level, or are they going to be just below that, or what can folks expect?
It is going to run the gamut. And again, this is one of the great things about having a Space Force and about having that focus and acceleration on warfighting capabilities is in the past, a lot of times there were limitations on what you could do. And even though we knew we needed to be better, the resources weren't always available. The resources are there right now. And our leadership understands that the threat is there and that we need to build these warfighters, and you can't do that unless they get the training at the unclassed, secret, and top secret level. So just like UST out at Vandenberg has upped its level, we've done the same, and we're going to teach all the way up to the TS level.
And really the comparison to other domains, like the air domain, is what you're developing, it sounds like, is that advanced training requirement for space operators. And could you describe a little bit about the difference between what you would consider advanced training and the necessity for advanced training, and professional military education, or PME, as people understand it? What are those differences?
Right. So a couple points there. I think when you have training or education, you're learning different skill sets, you're learning the background, you're being tested on that material, you're retaining that material so you can carry it on and go do other things. With training, you're actually learning the tactics, techniques, and procedures so you can become a better operator. They may be a little bit confusing because these folks are coming straight here before they've actually gone to do their operational job. But and that's where I would kind of draw a line between what is advanced training and what is this follow-on foundational training. This is the baseline. So these folks aren't going to graduate from this space warfighter follow-on training as an expert orbital warfighter or expert space battle manager or electronic warfare officer enlisted member. This is the baseline. So they're going to receive that foundation. And I think over the next 10 to 15 years, you're going to see cultures start to develop between these four distinct combat disciplines. And that's one thing I'm really excited about, is that culture will develop. It's going to take time. Culture happens from mostly the same people being in mostly the same place for a long time. And that's going to happen with these warfighters over the next couple decades. They're going to start to build that culture. And again, I said it's foundational. So this is just the beginning. Once they get to their units, that's where they're going to learn their job, start to figure out how that foundational information actually applies to what they're doing day to day. And then from there, they're going to receive advanced training on TTPs in-house, and then also they'll be sent back to the 319th to receive some of our other advanced training that we offer. So the advanced training to me is about the application, and it's about getting better instead of just trying to continue and maintain.
Yes, sir. Good. I understand that. And I think that helps a lot provide the perspective about it's simply a starting point for the advanced training concept. To that end, and application is extremely important. And I know you're familiar with the space flag exercise. So is there a relationship between the advanced training that you provide, the exercise that is executed, and then how your organization can receive back some of those advanced tactics, techniques, and procedures or recommendations for testing? Is that something that it falls within the 319th CTS to receive those, or does that go to another organization?
Yeah, so a couple great points there. So we're directly tied in with the space flag exercise, especially in the preparatory course. So the 319th, a couple of our courses are prep courses for other schools. or other advanced training. One of those is for the weapon school. We do the prep course here to ensure that our space weapon school officers and enlisted now are prepared to succeed when they get to their the 328th. As far as spaceflight goes, we do a prep course there. What we have is the folks that are going to be participants in that exercise coming here to kind of do a familiarization with what kind of products they're going to be building, what kind of team they're going to be working with, and what's expected of them during the exercise. And I'm sure you've participated in these types of exercises before. If you come in and you log on your computer before and you know what websites you need to go to, and you know who your partners are that you have to work with during the exercise, and you know that you're going to have coalition partners that you get to work with, or you know that you're going to be briefing the 4-star every morning, it's going to change the way that you prepare and change the way that you respond to the different stimulus that's being given to you. So we do work directly with all of the organizations and S36T, U.S. Space Force headquarters that are developing those exercises, and we do get feedback, and we do tailor those prep courses to ensure success during those the actual exercise.
And how many? So let's get into the numbers a little bit. How many folks are you bringing through the 319 CTS, and how do you gauge that? Is it annually? Is it every couple of weeks, monthly? You know, what's the metric people can think about in terms of this is the number of, no kidding, space warfighter operators that we need, and this is the margins that you're hitting in support of that operational need at the 319th.
Yes, sir. So before I talk about that, let me just clarify one thing. So I'm sitting in the Space Education Training Center, and there are a few organizations in this building. One is the National Security Space Institute, run by Colonel Lance, the Commandant. They're an educational organization, mostly working with educating space operators on their different the different capabilities of space and its application. They've got a lot of great courses on their side, and our organizations have always been intertwined and helped each other out over the last couple of decades. 319 CTS is purely focused on training and space training. Of our 13 courses, we are producing about between 1,300 students and 1,700 students per year through all those different courses. We have about a 37% increase coming for 2020, and a lot of that is due to these space warfighter courses. Between Colonel Lance and I, the NSSI and the 319th, we're going to produce close to 3,000 space educated and trained students over FY20. So we're pretty excited about that. All the students are coming through this building, so it's a lot of folks coming through here. There's a lot of challenges that come with that, but we're excited that they are getting those training and education opportunities to come through here. So for SWIFT specifically, right now we're running 3 of the 4 SWIFTs. There isn't one for space access and sustainment yet, but for the SBM, OW, and SEW SWIFT courses, they start on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. There are 15 training days, and the initial intent is to put through all of the UST Next graduates that graduated from March of this year on through the course. So we're not looking at the all of the older folks that are around, like myself, to go back and go through the course. We're looking to start fresh with those UST Next graduates from the 533rd and push all of them through. And we do have a plan to get every single one of them through. Right now, it's about, we're planned on having 18 students in each class. However, due to COVID-19 and some of the safety precautions and mitigations that we're taking here in the building, we're only going to put 10 students per each class. So those classes will run back-to-back, nonstop, from now until we change the course. And I'd have to get you a number. I think it's 420 students that are going to get through in the next year. And that's the number of new 13S's and 1 Charlie 6s coming through.
That's a lot of work. I know there's a lot of responsibility that you have to execute those courses. So thank you so much for doing that. Let's talk a little bit about innovation. How do we capture, and I like your point that you made about we're starting fresh. We're starting with the kids, if you will, that really have an idea of what this domain will need in terms of technology, processes, is there a innovation hub that you're helping to foster there at the 319th? And how do folks get those new ideas out? Is that something you're all covering over there?
That's a good question. And I think that comes back to the culture a little bit. Again, I've got a military history degree. I studied naval sea power. I was a missileer. I think if you look at a lot of the senior leaders across the Space Force, a lot of them look a lot more like me. They probably have a lot more background in things that aren't STEM focused. Not that all of them do, but some. Now these new students that are coming through, space isn't something that's new to them. I mean, I was excited about it because it was new and fresh, and I'd never studied something like this before. These new students are already STEM focused. They already know what they're getting themselves into. They already have a background in physics or aerospace engineering. They already know a lot about this domain. So they come into it with some experience. So those old courses were never going to be good enough for those folks. They are already building that culture of how space is going to, the space domain is going to change and how that culture is going to develop over the next 10 to 15 years. As far as innovation goes, the 319th is in contact, of course, with our partners, the NSSI and the 533rd. We are always working with Air University and the personnel there, especially the folks that are in some of the higher learning courses like SAS in the Blue Horizon program, and trying to get some of their feedback, looking at their papers and trying to incorporate some of their ideas into how the 319th trains. We also have direct reach back capability to all of the operational squadrons to get a lot of that feedback and try to incorporate it into our training. But I think the primary innovator is going to be these new A1Cs and lieutenants that are coming in who don't know the way it used to be. They only know what they're excited about, and they know about where they think the future of the Space Force is going, where the domain's going. Those are the folks that are going to be the innovators for the future and the culture of the Space Force.
Yes, sir. That's great. You talked about the papers coming in from different organizations, and I'm sure you've got this relationship, but I'm curious, do you get the information back from the 328th Weapons Squadron who executes the curriculum for the U.S. Air Force Weapons School Space Division? Do you get those papers back as well, or is there a collaboration there?
We do. So there's collaboration as far as formal. It's not as formal as I think it will be in the future as the Space Force continues to quickly establish itself and establish the different commands. One of the great benefits is that there's going to be a command that is focused on training and readiness and developing that doctrine and some of the innovation that we're talking about. So right now it's mostly done informally, taking in, it's just emails and conversations back and forth between those organizations. And then of course, resource facilities like this. I've got documents all around me. In fact, there's a document over here that I think was written 20 years ago, and it is titled A Separate Space Force, an 80-Year Conversation. And that document was written 20 years ago by a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And here we are 20 years later, really fulfilling what some of that conversation is about. But we're taking in those documents. However, I think that some of the new commands that are going to be developed are going to have organizations, and it's going to be their primary job to take in all of that information, synthesize it, and ensure that it's being incorporated into the doctrine and the training for space.
Well, Sebeck, that is really impressive, the library that's behind you. And from what I understand, that's the largest repository of space information that probably exists in the Space Force right now. And I suspect what a lot of viewers would be looking at is, how do they get access to that? Can anyone get into the courses that you're describing, or is it part of a very deliberate professional development program that's going to be part of the Space Force?
So the library that I'm sitting in, the Resource Center, belongs to the NSSI. However, it is open to use to all students that come through the building for the 319th or the NSSI. However, I don't think there is anything that would keep other space professionals from walking in here and working with some of the great resource managers and librarians that we have here. They do have a great website and they put out information. So if you just Google NSSI, I think their website will come up. And then we have links to it with the 319th as well. As far as getting into our courses, the 319th courses, and we get this question quite often. People will call and say, hey, we'd like to, I got a Facebook message the other day. Someone wanted their nephew that had just been commissioned into the Air Force to see if they could come over and take one of our orbital warfighting classes. I told them we would be happy to have them. However, they need to be designated as a 13S or 1 Charlie 6, and they need to go through UST Next first, that 87 to 110 day course, and then we would be happy to receive them and then ship them out. But it is not open to just anyone. The other courses that we have a much a little bit wider audience. We have a space warfare prep course that is mostly for deployers. We have a Director of Space Forces course, which of course you need to be a DS4 appointee, or you need to be one of their staff personnel that's going to be working with them. All of our courses on our website have the specific requirements to enter the course and register.
No, that makes sense. Curious about the AFSCs, and if this is something you can't answer, I completely understand. I suspect similar to what the air domain has done by creating different shred outs for their pilots. So you've got an 11F, that's a fighter pilot, an 11 Bravo, which is a bomber pilot, 11H for the different shred outs for pilots. Is that something that the Space Force is looking at doing, is creating different specialty codes for the shred outs that you described?
And I can tell you that it seems like that's logical that would happen at some point. I think S1 is where you would have to go to get the specific answer there. But I haven't been appointed. I'm still a space operator. But I think at some point I will be given a specific shred out. And I think it's going to make sense with the different combat disciplines that folks, if we're trying to build up focus and depth to accelerate the learning in that specific piece of the domain, and how you apply those capabilities, and I think that's going to make sense in the long run. But again, you'd have to ask the S1 exactly where they're going with that. But the fact that we have these courses, it's really exciting that people are going to get to focus, because it's much easier to explain not only to air power professionals or professionals in the land and maritime domain. It's complicated when you say, I'm a space operator, and they say, okay, great. What does that mean? It's going to be much better and more descriptive when someone can say, I am a space battle manager, and here is what I'm a professional in. Applying this specific piece and these specific capabilities to the domain.
That's great. And I think there will probably be an opportunity in the future, as you described, the different shred outs, to maybe even evolve the courses you're creating to create separate tracks at the Air Force Weapons School, so that you take that to the next level, and they get more information and more education and training on those specific shred outs. And I know we can't discuss that here. We don't know what the future holds, but it seems like a logical discussion that may be taking place somewhere in Space Force.
And I think, my leadership team is moving fast. They're not folks that sit around. They move quick, and they're standing up so many different pieces of the Space Force, and they're doing it in a smart and expeditious way. But you can only do so many things so fast. So I can say we're moving forward very quickly. But some of those pieces are going to take a little bit of time to develop.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it so much. Any closing comments at all for the Space Force Association community, and what folks might need to know about the 319th Combat Training Squadron?
Well, I would just thank you for the SFA's support, and also just asking these questions. The 319th is a strong team of about 66 folks, and we're a mix of contractors, active duty, and civilians. And then also we have direct support from some Navy personnel in the building, and then also a reserve squadron. And it takes a lot of work for those folks to put these courses on And it's amazing what they've accomplished. And I think the 319th is just a small example of what the whole Space Force is doing right now. Every unit that has a space mission is going through the same thing that the 319th is, and changing the way that they operate and trying to organize into a way that can best support, protect, and defend our space assets. So it's an exciting time. I couldn't have, I didn't get to choose this, but there's no better time to be the 319th CTS commander. There's excitement all around between the combatant command and the new service. So it's just a lot of fun right now to be the commander of the 319th CTS, and really just a thank you to my team here for all the hard work they do. They should really be the ones sitting here explaining all this to you. But and thank you for the support you're giving us and trying to get this message out.
Yes, sir. We're happy to do it, and we are definitely here for you. I can't thank you enough for your time today, Lieutenant Colonel Sebeck, and I look forward to interviewing you on the progress as this continues to evolve in the future, and anything we can do to help out, we are standing by. So, sir, thank you again for your time, and looking forward to catching up with you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.